The wind carried a dryness that spoke of old bones and broken promises, whispering through the brittle weeds that clung to the side of the trail. Long shadows stretched across the red earth, cast by cottonwoods that hadn't felt real rain in years. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried out once, then went quiet. Just before dusk, when the sky turned the color of spilled whiskey, a woman appeared at the edge of Whispering Rock. She came on foot, leading 2 small children behind her, one no taller than a fence post, the other not much more than that. Her dress was the sort you wore when there wasn't anything else to wear. Dust clung to her like a second skin. Her hair was pinned back, though loose strands danced with the breeze like they were remembering better days. She walked with a steady gait, neither hurried nor slow, and not once did she look around to see who might be watching. At the edge of town, past the livery and the church with its bell long rusted still, sat a small cabin, gray wood, sloped roof, a porch whose boards creaked if you dared step wrong. There a man chopped wood with practiced rhythm. He didn't glance up when the footsteps came. He rarely looked up for much these days. The axe bit into the stump. He pulled it free, split another log, stacked it on the growing pile. And still the footsteps came. Finally, they stopped at the bottom of his steps. He looked then. She stood there, the woman, the children tucked behind her like secrets. Her face was sun-kissed but drawn, like someone who hadn't eaten warm food in days. Her eyes weren't pleading, though they were steady. She was holding something in, not reaching out. He leaned the axe against the rail. She said, soft as confession, they ain't yours, but they need you. For a moment nothing moved. Not the trees. Not the wind. Just the weight of her words hanging there, raw and trembling, too honest to ignore. He didn't speak. She reached into the folds of her dress and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The edges were torn. It had been folded and unfolded too many times. She stepped up, laid it on the porch rail like she was placing flowers on a grave. He didn't reach for it. It's from Jed, she said. That name broke something behind his eyes, but only just. He blinked once, jaw shifting like he was chewing on rocks. She waited. Finally, he picked up the letter. His hands were rough, lined with dust and callus. He read it once. Then again. Folded it slow. Looked up. She said, he said if anything ever happened, if I needed someone. The children watched him like animals too long in the wild, unsure, wary, holding tight to the hems of her dress. The boy had freckles and bare feet. The girl had a small book tucked under her arm, pages wrinkled from rain or maybe tears. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. He stepped back, opened the door without a word. She hesitated. Just for the night, she offered. He nodded once, then turned away. Inside, the house was small, just one main room and a lean-to kitchen. A cot in the corner, a table, a fire barely smoldering in the hearth. Dust motes floated in the air, catching the last of the fading sunlight. It didn't look like anyone had lived here, so much as survived. The girl set her book down on the edge of the table. The boy crawled up on a stool and sat quiet. The woman remained standing. Thank you, she said. He didn't answer. He stoked the fire. The room filled with the smell of old wood smoke and something deeper, maybe resignation, maybe something else. Your name's still Tom Reddick? She asked. He nodded. Asterisk, I'm Clara. Clara May Dalton. This here's Micah and Ellie, asterisk. He didn't look at them. He just stirred the fire again. The silence grew roots. The only sound was the wind brushing against the walls and the faint rustle of a page as Ellie opened her book. Finally, he said, Jed died? Clara's mouth trembled, then set firm. Asterisk 3 months ago. Mining collapse out by Devil's Crown, asterisk. Tom's knuckles turned white on the iron poker. Asterisk, I buried him myself. Carried him back with a mule and a tarp. Ain't had a proper roof since. Thought I'd make it to St. Arbor, but the wagon wheel snapped. We walked. 43 miles, asterisk, she took breath. Jed said you help if it came to it. Tom sat down in a worn chair. His eyes flicked to the letter folded on the table. I ain't no kind of father. Good, Clara said, kneeling to unlace Micah's boots. Asterisk, they don't need a father. They need a place where no one's shouting, and the floor stays still when they sleep, asterisk. The boy leaned against her without thinking, a small warmth clinging to a bigger one. She looked up at Tom. Her eyes didn't plead, they dared. You owe Jed, she said, soft but not cruel. Tom stood and walked to the shelf, pulled down a tin of beans and strip of salt pork, set them on the table, took a pot from the hook, filled it at the pump by the window. No words, just water, heat, and the quiet click of knife against wood as he sliced the meat. "You'll stay the night," he said, still not looking up. Clara's shoulders sank a little, just enough to show how hard she'd been holding them straight. Tom cooked. The smell filled the room, simple food, but warm. Clara served the children first, then herself. Tom sat last, ate slow. Micah fell asleep on the floor before the plates were cleared. Ellie curled up beside him, the book still open to a page with a hand-drawn sketch of a house on a hill. Clara rinsed the tin plates and set them to dry. Tom lit a single lantern. "I'll sleep on the floor," Clara said. "Take the cot," he answered. "I don't sleep much anyway." She looked at him, just for a moment. Not with gratitude, with understanding. Like maybe she knew what silence sounded like when it screamed. She didn't thank him again, just nodded, took her shawl, and lay down beside the children. Tom sat by the hearth and watched the fire die. Outside, the wind shifted. Something had changed. The cabin, long empty, now held the breath of 4 souls, 3 asleep, 1 not quite at rest. And outside, in the deepening night, coyotes howled low from the hills, as if sensing the stir of something sacred. He reached for the letter again, unfolded it, read the last line over and over. Asterisk, he's the only one I'd trust. Not because he's kind, but because he never pretends to be. Asterisk. Tom folded it once more and slipped it inside a small wooden box under the hearth. He looked toward the cot. The children had shifted. Micah was curled beside Ellie. Clara's arm draped gently over both. Tom leaned back in his chair, stared at the beams above his head. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel entirely alone. The wind moved through the cracks in the wall. The night held its breath. And the fire, though small, refused to go out. Morning came soft and gold, like honey spilled slow across the hills. The light touched the cabin windows with gentle fingers, nudging the corners of sleep from wooden seams and tired eyes. The air was cooler than it had been in days, the kind of breeze that carried the memory of rain, though the sky held not a single cloud. Tom stood by the pump again, splashing cold water on his face. The ache in his shoulders had nothing to do with age and everything to do with memory. He watched the steam curl up from the coffee pot, then turned as soft footfalls creaked across the porch. Clara stood in the doorway, hair undone, one sleeve tugged down where Ellie had clung to her during the night. Her expression wasn't guarded, it was hollow, like someone who hadn't dared feel safe long enough to recognize when she finally was. "I can help," she said, stepping barefoot into the dust. He handed her the coffee without a word. She took it, sipped. Eyes flicked toward the barn, then the woods beyond it. "I heard coyotes," she murmured. "Last night. They're always out there. Just closer now." She nodded, lips pressed thin. "You have a gun." "2." She waited. "I'll show you where they are," he added, voice like gravel washed in smoke. They drank the rest of the coffee in silence. Inside, the children stirred. Micah's small voice rose, asking for eggs, then falling into a whisper when he remembered where he was. Ellie followed behind, still holding that book like it was something holy. Breakfast was quick: bread, fried potato, a few scrambled eggs from the coop. The children ate like they'd been taught to take little and chew slow. Tom noticed. Clara noticed that he noticed. Afterward, he took Micah to the shed, gave him a small hammer and a bag of bent nails. "Straighten them," he said, "one by one." Micah stared up at him, then nodded solemnly and got to work. Tom turned back toward the porch and froze. Clara stood holding his rifle, not awkwardly, not uncertain. Her grip was precise, her stance wide, her shoulder square. "Where'd you learn to handle that?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "Jed taught me. Before we were married, when we lived on the borderland. Had to hunt our own meals then." She turned, caught his eye. There was no pride in her voice, just history. He studied her like a man studies the wind, trying to see what it might become before it changed direction. "Ever fire at something alive?" he asked. She nodded once. "Coyotes mostly. Once a man." Tom's silence stretched too long. She lowered the rifle. He didn't die, but he limped bad after. That drew the corner of Tom's mouth into something like a smile, though it vanished just as fast. That evening, after chores and a bowl of stew, Clara sat with Ellie under the cottonwood tree. The girl pointed to sketches in her book, sunsets, horses, a lone cabin drawn in soft pencil. Her voice was too quiet to reach Tom on the porch, but he could see Clara listening. Really listening. Like the words mattered more than the day behind them. "Why'd you leave wherever you were before?" he asked when she came up later, brushing dust from her skirt. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past him toward the darkening horizon. "There was a man," she said finally. "Not the kind you ask for, just the kind that's there when your husband don't come back. Offered work. Shelter. Said I owed him for taking us in." Tom didn't speak. She met his gaze. "I didn't want my children to grow up watching me be owned." That hung between them, sharp and cutting. "Do they know?" he asked. "No," she said. "Not all of it. Just that we had to go. And we walked. And I wasn't going to stop until I found someone I could trust." She didn't need to say who she meant. He felt it in his bones. He shifted, folding his arms. "You should have gone east. There's better towns." "Maybe," she said, "but they didn't have your name in Jed's handwriting." That night, he lay on the floor again, listening to the fire pop and the wind shift. The coyotes were closer this time, and something about their cries made his spine itch. He rose just before dawn, boots crunching on frost-laced grass, and went to check the barn. The latch was broken. Inside, one of the goats was gone. He followed the blood trail past the fence line, through brush and over rock. Coyotes didn't kill like this. Not clean. This had purpose, intelligence, and tracks. Boot tracks. Back at the cabin, he found Clara already dressed. She knew before he spoke. "Someone's been watching," he said. "Is it him?" she asked. He didn't answer. She didn't ask again. Instead, they put the children inside and bolted the door. Tom pulled the rifle down from its mount. Clara took the shotgun. When he looked at her again, he saw it, the fear under the steel, the tremble buried beneath purpose. But he also saw the fire, and it scared him more than whatever was out there. They waited by the window. Hours passed. Nothing moved. At sunset, a rider appeared over the ridge. Alone. Wide hat. Long coat. Moved like he knew where he was going. Clara's breath caught. "That's him." Tom stepped outside, calm as a preacher at a funeral. The man stopped 20 feet from the porch. Smiled with teeth too white for someone born of dust. "Well, I'll be," the man said. "Ain't this a pretty little picture?" Tom didn't smile. "You've had your fun. Now you turn around." "I ain't talking to you," the man replied, leaning in the saddle. "I'm talking to what belongs to me." Clara appeared at the doorway, gun in hand. "I don't belong to anyone." The man's smile widened. "Girl, you and them brats walked out on your debt. That ain't just foolish. That's dangerous." Tom stepped down from a porch, slow. "Go back," he said. The man reached for something beneath his coat. Tom raised the rifle. "You're not fast enough," the man warned. Tom didn't flinch. "You don't know what I am." They stared at each other like two wolves circling the same fire. Then, without warning, the man laughed. All right. I see how it is. Family man now, are you? Fine. I'll ride on. For now. But this road don't end here, Reddick." He turned his horse, dust kicking up behind him. Rode off slow, too slow for peace. When he was gone, Tom lowered the rifle. Clara looked at him. "That was just a warning," she said. "I know." She tightened her grip on the shotgun. "So what now?" Tom didn't answer. Not yet. He walked to the edge of the porch, eyes fixed on the ridge. The sky was turning violet, the wind rising again. Behind him, Ellie called out, scared, uncertain. Clara moved to comfort her. Tom stood silent, watching the trail where the rider had vanished. He knew that kind of man. Not just mean, but patient. Not just cruel, but calculating. And now they were all marked. The sun vanished behind the hills. Somewhere out there, vengeance stirred. And in the silence that followed, Tom knew something deeper than warning had come. He turned back to the door. This was no longer a refuge. This was a stand. Night settled over the cabin, like a wool blanket pulled heavy across the shoulders. Thick, dark, and absolute. No stars showed through the clouds that had rolled in low and gray, hiding moonlight and muting every edge. The silence wasn't peace. It was pause. Like the world itself had taken a breath and was waiting to see what came next. Tom lit only one lamp, keeping it low. Shadows danced on the walls like ghosts remembering something they hadn't finished saying. Clara sat at the table, sharpening a knife with slow, deliberate strokes. Not because she planned to use it, but because the sound of steel against stone kept her hands from trembling. The children were tucked into the far corner, Ellie curled up tight, one of Tom's old flannel shirts wrapped around her like armor. Micah sat beside her, awake and watchful. He'd taken a hammer with him to bed. Tom hadn't stopped him. Outside, the wind shifted again. Carried something new. Smoke. Not fire. Not yet. But someone was burning something nearby. Tom stepped out onto the porch, boots making no sound on the old planks. He sniffed once, listened harder. A barn fire? A decoy? Or maybe a signal? Coyotes cried from a ridge, one after the other. Too many. Too fast. They weren't coyotes. He turned back inside, shut the door and locked the bar across it. The boards were old, but the weight behind them had grown. "We don't have long," he said quietly. Clara rose, wiped the blade clean. Tom gave her the rifle, kept the shotgun for himself. "We'll stay close to the children," he said. "And when they come, we show them they walk too far." Clara didn't blink. "You think it'll just be him?" "No," Tom said. "He don't talk that loud unless he's got someone listening." They waited by the hearth, the fire nothing more than a whisper of warmth now. Every creak of a house felt louder than it should have, every shifting board a reminder that walls were only as strong as the people inside them. Then hoofbeats. 4 of them. Maybe 5. A quiet kind of approach, deliberate, like they'd practiced riding soft. Clara took position near the window, half hidden in curtain shadow. Tom stepped behind the door, breath steady. The children huddled silent, Ellie's small fingers wrapped in Micah's shirt. A voice called out, "Evening, Reddick." Not the same man as before. This one younger. Smoother. Too calm. "Didn't want to come knocking, but your visitor left a few things behind. Thought we'd be neighborly and return 'em." No one inside spoke. "You see, she took something don't belong to her. Ain't just the children, though those matter too. There's a ring. A letter. Some promises made. We don't want trouble, but we ain't scared of it neither." Clara flinched like she'd been struck. Tom stepped forward, still inside the doorway. "You know what she took," he said, voice gravel low. The silence on the other side of the door stretched. "She took her life back. And now she's here. That makes it mine to protect." The voice outside smiled. You could hear it. "Then I suppose this is where we see which of you's willing to lose more." Then came the first shot. It wasn't meant to hit, just to rattle. It struck the far corner of the cabin, sent splinters flying. Tom returned fire, one blast through the slats of the wall, close enough to draw a yelp and a curse. "Micah, fireplace," he said. The boy ran on instinct, dragging his sister with him. The crawl space behind the stone hearth had once been used for storing food in winter. It held children just as well. Tom heard the scrape of boots on gravel. More than 5 now. He met Clara's eyes across the room. "You don't leave unless I fall," he said. She didn't nod. She didn't have to. The first man came through the front window, glass exploding in a shimmer of moonless light. Clara dropped him before his boots hit the floor. The rifle's crack split the night wide open. Then more, coming from the back, trying to circle. Tom turned, fired twice, the buckshot punching holes in the dark. Shouts outside. Cursing. One fell. Another ran. But the ones that stayed were quiet. Professional. This wasn't some gang. This was a hunt. Tom turned just in time to see one man slam through the rear door, knife drawn. Clara moved first, struck him hard across the jaw with the rifle stock, then kicked him backward into the table. The man dropped, didn't get back up. "You all right?" Tom asked. Clara's voice didn't shake. "Next one's mine too." They fought through the silence, through the smoke, through 1,000 things neither of them had asked for. The room filled with heat and noise and motion, and then stillness again. Bodies on the ground, blood on the floor, breath heaving, and then nothing. Tom turned in a slow circle, checking corners. Outside, the riders had fled. One wounded dragged himself down the slope, howling into the dirt. Tom stepped onto the porch, watching, listening. His hands were steady, but his bones felt old. Behind him, Clara lowered the rifle. "They'll come back," she said. "Maybe," Tom answered, "but not tonight." She sat down on the top stair, wiped sweat from her temple. "I thought I'd never feel scared for the right reasons again," she whispered. Tom sat beside her, laid the shotgun across his knees. "You were never meant to fight alone," he said. Inside the cabin, Micah emerged from the crawl space. He held Ellie's hand like he'd never let go again. They stepped into the lamplight, and Ellie looked at Tom, not with fear, but with something harder to carry. Hope. He met their gaze, saw the question they didn't speak. "Are we safe?" And beneath it, "Are we yours now?" Tom stood, walked back into the cabin. He picked up the ring that had fallen from the first man's pocket, held it in his palm like it still held warmth. Clara watched him. "That was Jed's," she said quietly. Tom didn't ask how the man had come to own it. He didn't need to. Some things didn't need to be spoken out loud to be understood. He set the ring gently on the mantel. Then he turned to Clara. "You stay here as long as you need." Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. "I think," she said slowly, "we already have." Outside, the wind shifted again. But this time, it didn't smell of smoke. It smelled of pine, of clean earth after a storm. And inside that little cabin, the fire finally burned steady. Not for warmth, not for fear, but because sometimes, against all odds, the darkness doesn't win. Sometimes what's broken stays, and learns to build again. The days that followed didn't bring peace, just quieter echoes of a world trying to decide what it wanted from them. Clara swept the blood-stained boards each morning like it was dust from a forgotten season. Micah chopped wood without being asked. Ellie fed the chickens with solemn grace, humming under her breath in a way that made the air feel gentler. Tom watched them from a distance, often from the porch, hands wrapped around a tin cup of coffee gone cold. He didn't speak much, but neither did they. The silence between them had softened, turned into something not empty, but patient, like a field waiting for spring. And yet the sense never left, the knowing that someone was still coming. Trouble in the West didn't knock twice. It left tracks. It waited until you exhaled. Tom had lived long enough to know it wasn't over. Not when a man like Enoch had been mentioned. Not when Clara's face still turned to flint every time the sun set westward. There was a story inside her still folded too tight, too sharp-edged to be told. One evening, while the wind was calm and the clouds were low, she finally spoke it. They sat by the fire again, Micah asleep against a stone, Ellie curled beside him, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and stewed beans. Clara looked into the flame like it was something she recognized. Enoch wasn't just Jed's brother. He was the one who made Jed cruel. Tom didn't speak. Let her keep unraveling. Jed was sweet once. When we first met, he used to read to me. Could barely write his own name, but he'd read dime novels like he was play-acting someone better. I loved him for it. Thought I could keep that part of him safe. But love ain't armor. Not when the rot runs deep. She paused, eyes flicking toward the children, but they didn't stir. After the war, Jed changed. And Enoch came around more often. Filled his head with talk about land and legacy, about making people earn their place. He called me soft. Said women were meant to bear things, not change them. Clara looked up then, met Tom's eyes. He told Jed he needed to remind me of that. And Jed listened. Tom's grip tightened around the cup, his knuckles bone-white in the firelight. "I stayed too long," Clara whispered. Then one night he came back drunk and mean, and Micah stepped between us. He was just 9. Tom stood slowly, crossed the room. He didn't touch her, didn't speak. Just stood close enough for her to feel it, someone solid who would not vanish at the sound of her truth. I ran that night, took what I could. I knew Enoch wouldn't let it be, but I didn't think he'd track us this far. She turned her face then, something in her throat breaking free. "And now you're caught in it. They'll come again. Enoch doesn't lose. He doesn't let go." Tom looked out the window. The night was thick again, pressing close like it wanted to listen. "Then we finish it," he said simply. "We make it, so there's no reason left to follow." Clara stared at him, searching for hesitation. Found none. The next morning, he rode out. Took only what he needed, his Winchester, his old trail coat, and a map folded so many times it held memory, like skin holds scar. He didn't tell Clara where he was going. Only told her to keep the children close, to trust the dogs, and to light the chimney if anything felt wrong. He rode west, toward the ridge line that bent like a question across the sky. The tracks weren't hard to follow. Enoch's men weren't careful. They thought themselves ghosts, but ghosts don't leave cigar butts and whiskey bottles half buried near campfires. He found one of them before dusk. A scout, separated from the pack. Tom didn't speak. Didn't draw quick. He waited until the man turned, eyes going wide. Recognition hit. "Reddick," the man whispered. "You're supposed to be." The rest got buried in pine needles. Tom found the others just after midnight. 6 men. Camped beneath a rock outcropping like they'd carved their claim into the world. Enoch sat in the center, wrapped in a long gray coat, eyes bright and dangerous. Tom didn't shoot. He stepped into the firelight slow, calm. Enoch stood, smiling like a man who'd already counted his winnings. "Well," he said, "ain't this something?" Tom said nothing, just looked at each of them, in turn. "You've got something of mine," Enoch said. Tom raised his voice then, soft but carrying. No, I've got something that never belonged to you. Enoch laughed once. Dry. You think this is a fairy tale, Reddick? You think men like me just disappear because someone glares at them hard enough? Tom walked closer. I think men like you only exist until someone remembers you're not gods. Enoch's hand twitched toward his belt. So did his men's. But Tom didn't go for his gun. He went for the truth. You hunt women. Break children. You talk legacy like you built something, but all you ever did was poison what others made. Enoch's smile slipped. You're not walking away from this, he hissed. Tom took one more step. Neither are you. The first shot came from the trees. Clara. Then Micah, flanking from the right. Tom had sent word through a rancher 2 towns over, left a note buried in the hollow post. The trap closed with thunder. Tom fired once, then twice. Clara's shot took down the man reaching for the rifle at the fire. Micah's missed, but it startled one into turning the wrong way. By dawn, 3 were dead. 2 ran. And Enoch. He didn't run. He charged. Tom met him halfway. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't quick. But it was final. And when it was done, Tom stood over a man who'd thought himself too powerful to bleed. He knelt, took the ring from Enoch's pocket. Not Clara's, another one. Smaller. Duller. He buried it with him, right there beneath the stones. Then he rode home. They saw him coming. Micah from the barn roof. Clara at the gate. Ellie ran barefoot through the frost to meet him. Tom swung down from the saddle. His face was worn, dirt-caked, eyes hollow but clear. Clara came to his side, searching him for wounds. I'm all right, he said, voice rough. She didn't ask what happened. He didn't tell. Some things only need to be known in silence. That night, they sat by the fire again. The house smelled of stew and new wood. The bloodstains were gone. The boards replaced. Micah built a small wooden horse from scrap pine and gave it to Ellie. She smiled for the first time in days. Clara sat beside Tom, their arms not touching, but not needing to. You still want us to leave? She asked softly. Tom watched the fire, listened to the wind, the quiet. No, he said. I want you to stay, but only if you want to. Clara nodded. I do. Outside, spring stirred behind the clouds. And inside, something bloomed without needing light at all. The kind of love that doesn't rush in. It walks, slow and sure, like a widow with 2 children, knocking on a door, and finding it open.